Good morning. We're now on clip 3 of lesson 9. We're at the end of a 2-unit lesson, which we've been dealing with various questions and various models of Jewish moral education. In lesson 9, we've been talking about Martin Buber. I introduced Martin Buber. I talked mainly about his biography and a little about his thought in the last video clip. Here we're going to be talking about his dialogical philosophy in general and how it impacts on his understanding of Judaism and his approach, and most importantly, his approach to moral education. Now, at the center of Buber's dialogical philosophy is a distinction between I, it, and I, thou. This has become very, very influential in philosophy, in psychology, in studies of religion, but it's a fairly simple intuition, and it deals with two different, very, very different, I would say even dichotomous and contrasting orientations to the world. It could be to nature, it could be to animals, but it's best understood as two different orientations between me, between I, and another person. And let's start with the I-it relationship. Now, an I-it relationship is, at its foundation, utilitarian and, as a result, functional. Each person plays a particular function. Now, let me explain this. Most of the interactions between two people, even if they're positive, helpful interactions for both people involved, it's on a utilitarian and functional basis. Why? Let's take the relationship between us. As a teacher, I enter the classroom because I have a certain function from a utilitarian motivation. I'm here to teach. I'm here to transmit information. I'm here to shape students' personas. I'm here to develop a relationship. But there's a certain function. Students also in this relationship come from a utilitarian orientation. They're here to study. They're here to get a degree. And that defines the interaction. And for Buber here, it's a very, very important point. The interaction as a result is superficial. In other words, I don't enter the I-it relationship, and students don't enter the I-it relationship with their whole persona. It's not a transformative experience. Why? Because it deals with Ari Ackerman as a teacher. It deals with each particular student qua student, and therefore maybe there's some extra knowledge here. Maybe there's a certain shift, but for Buber it's always external and superficial. And also, even though Buber would admit that many I-it relationships are neutral or sometimes are even positive, but often because of its superficial nature, and even more important, because of its utilitarian functional direction. In other words, each person enters there because of a certain purpose. It leads to exploitation. In other words, if I relate to the other person as a vessel to accomplish a certain purpose, then that will lead to exploitation in a very, very natural manner. The last point about I-it relationship is that most relationships are I-it, and we'll qualify this. We'll say we'll see later, most interactions are I-it. Most of the day, I involve myself in the I-it realm. That's how the empirical world is shaped. That most of the day, we're involved in trying to accomplish certain purposes. Our interactions are shaped by this drive, and for Buber, it's a very, very modern drive, even though it's something built into the human persona. We're always trying to accomplish things. We're very purpose directed. And for Buber, this is a real problem in modernity, in modern communities, in modern education. And therefore, Buber, at the center of his thought is the attempt to highlight and to pave a path towards a very different type of experience and a very different type of orientation to other people, and it's the I-thou. Now, I-thou is, at its ground, does not have a purpose. And here, again, let's talk about student-teacher relationships. I'm a teacher. I teach in various settings, and let's say a student, this can happen in an internet course, and one could critique this as a result, but we'll put that aside. A student comes to my office. And again, it could be because of a certain purpose. They don't understand a particular assignment. But I see that there's something really bothering the student. And it's not relating to a specific assignment. There's something much more existential going on. And as a result, I'm present, I'm attentive, and I'm empathetic. And I listen to the person, and I'm there for the person. And as a result, the person opens up to me. And we have an I-thou interaction. And what happens there? What allows me to get to the I-thou relationship? Here, for Buber, it's very important that I contract my ego. In other words, what really guides and drives all these I-it relationships is an ego that is always trying to satisfy itself, that is purpose-driven, that wants more experiences, more accomplishments. And by contracting the ego, and here Buber mentions a very important, the notion of tzimtzum, which is taken from the Kabbalistic and the Hasidic tradition, that we talked about Buber's relationship to that. I contract my ego, and therefore I can be present, I can be attentive, and I can be empathetic. And another thing that's very characteristic of these I-thou interaction is that the totality of the person, in other words, but the ego, which is always superficial, is put aside, and as a result, Ari Ackerman, not qua teacher, but Ari Ackerman, the fullness of my being is present for the person. There's something paradoxical. On the one hand, I'm contracting, but on the other hand, I'm expanding. The totality of the person, both me and the student that I'm interacting with, is present in this I-thou interaction. And as a result, it's transformative. Ari Ackerman is no longer the same person. Unlike I-it relationships and interactions, which always the change, if there is any change, it's superficial, it's external, an I-thou interaction will always transform the very essence of the person. In other words, I am in a dialogue with the totality of the other person, and my I, my very, very being, will transform itself as a result of the dialogue. In other words, for Buber, human beings are in relationships with others. That's the essence of human nature. And these relationships bring about the construction of the person, him or her very, very being. Now another important point here, and this is very important in terms of moral education, every I-thou relationship brings about responsibility in both directions. If I have an I-thou relationship, I have a certain responsibility for the person, even when our interaction is no longer I-thou. Lastly, just to clarify, an I-thou is not a relationship. It's really a moment. Most relationships the most interactions within a particular relationship, even husband and wife, even teacher and student, are I-it. But what Buber is getting at, that we have moments within these relationships that are I-thou moments, where we really are empathetic, we're present, we're attentive to the needs of the person, and as a result, the subsequent I-it interactions will be very, very different. Now, Buber takes this I-thou notion and the distinction between I-it and I-thou, and it's very important in terms of his understanding of God and his understanding of Judaism. Okay? Let's look firstly at his conception of God. God as the eternal thou. Now, this is a very, very complicated notion, and in the confines of this video, I'll just a couple of points. Firstly, God is present in every I-thou moment. In other words, God, what does it mean God is the eternal thou? He's the only being in the world that can never be an it. Right? And therefore, he's always when we're having an I-thou moment with another person, God is present in that relationship. And therefore, when you want to get at God for Buber, you can't transcend the world to find God. You know, it's the portal to God is I-thou relationships. And therefore, religion is all about conversing with God. It's having an I-thou relationship. It's not talking about God. It's not worshiping God. It's not observing God. It's talking to God. It's having an I-thou relationship to God, which obviously will enrich and lead to additional I-thou relationships with other people. And that's what religion is all about. Buber very much criticized institutionalized religion. He thought that institutionalized religion is about I-it, and true religion is about I-thou. Now, this brings us to his understanding of Judaism. Authentic Judaism is the recording of I-thou moments between Jews and God. Judaism at its core is an I-thou continuous relationship between the Jews and God. And therefore, Buber distinguishes between authentic episodes of Judaism, which is Bible, early Christianity, very radical move by Buber, early Hasidism, and Zionism, spiritual cultural Zionism for him, and inauthentic Judaism, which is about Talmud, medieval halacha. In other words, Buber sees halacha, Jewish law, as related to I-it, and he sees more spiritual movements within the Bible, within Hasidism, within Zionism, as the true Jewish spirit, which is related to I-thou interactions. So that's in a very, very short and succinct and maybe insufficient presentation of Buber's understanding of God and Judaism. And in the last lesson, I'll give you additional reading where you could explore this more in depth. You could obviously contact me. I could at any point in the course, and if something really interests you, I could give you additional readings. But this is a particularly, I think, rich notion. But let's see, again, our main concern is moral education, and let's see how this plays out in terms of moral education. We've seen a number of models of moral education. First, we saw the Aristotelian Maimonidean model, where moral education is all about moral behavior, getting kids to do things that are right, and this is through habituation. We saw a very different model, the Dewey Beit Rabban model, where moral education is about moral reasoning, problem solving, get students to think more deeply, more effectively about moral problems. Now, Buber rejects both of these. Both of these are all about I-it for Buber. What's moral education? It's about developing moral relationships, but developing I-thou relationships through dialogue, through empathy. And therefore, obviously, a teacher, and I want you to try to figure out how do you translate Buber's approach in a much more concrete way. But obviously, the teacher has to enter into I-thou relationships with students. He has to encourage students to develop I-thou relationships between them. And that's for Buber, the main thrust of moral education. It's the main thrust of education, and certainly Jewish education. Thank you.